Well, come on in. Cheers, everyone. Welcome to the Backyard Tabletop. I am one of your hosts here, Jake.
And I'm the other one, Kurtis.
He is Kurtis. This is a podcast about us talking about Dungeons and Dragons, specifically 5th edition, because that's what we play, and most of the world plays.
Sure.
What do you think percentage wise? What percentage of people that play D&D do you think still plays 2nd edition?
Like 6%, maybe.
I think that's a good guess.
Now here's another thing. How many people that play tabletop RPGs? What percentage of that do you think plays D&D?
Ooh, that's an interesting one. I would say I'd say a strong 70%.
Oh, vast majority, huh?
Yeah, I think majority of people.
I think it's a majority, but I'm gonna. Yeah, all TTRPGs. I think it's a majority, but I'm gonna say it's probably closer to like 55%, like just barely the majority.
I think as of recent years, I bet there was a time where it was more. I mean, well, after maybe January of 2023, maybe it is more like closer to that. Anyway, beside the point, we talk about D&D, specifically the games that Kurtis and I are in. We are in 2 different games. I play in a group, Kurtis plays in a group. We are best friends, and we like to talk and catch each other up on where we're at.
Yeah, man. It's great. We talk, and it's always fun.
I've never had a bad time filming this podcast with you thus far.
That's good.
Yeah. We'll see how it goes.
Mm-hmm.
See how this one goes.
There's always a first time for everything.
There's always a first time, but it's not today. I don't think so. I'm just too happy. Too
happy.
Giddy today. Too giddy.
What are you happy about, Jake? Are you happy about maybe are you so overly happy maybe because you're a cheater?
No, I never cheat at the game of D&D unless I'm the dungeon master. That was a segue.
Segue.
You know what? Because this has been coming up on my feed, specifically actually in TikTok, and actually my wife Sarah has seen a few videos talk about this, and it's also been somewhat of a topic in the D&D community. Can the dungeon master technically cheat in the D and in the D in the D&D?
In the D&D.
Can the dungeon master cheat? Now, when we say this, we mean in a way of like, does fudging a dice roll, like changing a dice roll to either make it hit or miss when that's not what the dice said, or giving more hit points.
Giving more hit points, giving creatures abilities they shouldn't have.
Yes.
Not keeping track of your creature's spell slots, all that kind of stuff.
All those things, or it kind of gets definitely a little weird when you start getting into the nitty-gritty mechanics. So, like, technically, can the D&D the dungeon master cheat is a very interesting question, and I think right off the bat, I would say, like, a good dungeon master doesn't cheat. A bad one that's specifically fudging the dice rolls to like make his NPC seem cooler, I would say that could be a cheating type of thing to do. I don't know. What are your first initial thoughts, Kurtis?
Here is my initial thought, Jacob. I think inherently when you say cheating, the point of cheating is to get a leg up on people that you're competing with, right? That's what cheating is.
Yes, I would say so.
And so, in my opinion, if you are playing a dungeon master who your goal is not to compete with your players, but instead to provide them with a good experience and help them have fun as much as possible, then there's no such thing as cheating for you because you're not competing with anybody. And instead, if the decisions you're making are for the good of your players and for the good of the story, then no, I don't think a dungeon master is wrong for doing any of those things. I personally, now this may come as a big surprise to you, Jake.
I'm so ready for this. I'm
This
preparing
this is
myself.
a bomb I'm going to drop here.
Okay. You heard it here first,
I
folks.
myself have been known to completely ignore hit points on a boss monster, or completely ignore, or decide that actually they should have 3 more of those spell slots because that's a really cool spell, and it's very fun and cinematic. Or yeah, this rule totally says that, guy, and that's why it's really fun and interesting that you're doing this. I myself... Now, here's the one thing I don't really do. I don't really fudge dice rolls.
Okay.
I like letting the dice decide things, so I don't fudge dice very often. However, I don't necessarily think it's a terrible thing to do so.
No, I am actually very much with you. That was going to be the point I've made. I have been known to, I have on occasion given my monster more hit points. I've never completely ignored hit points before, though I imagine that might be kind of nice at times, especially when you have like a bunch of minions you're running or something like that. But I do like keeping track of hit points, but for me, for a long time, I was at a table where I had 7 players, and action economy in D&D is huge. And so when my players get to like through 4 of them and they've done like almost 200 damage, I mean, like if this is going to be any fun, like, because that's the thing is like, I don't want to like, okay, there's just a lot of players, and your monsters need more hit points in order to like get some rounds in. You know what I'm saying?
I will say for like general creatures that I use with our group that we tend to kind of play with, it's a lot of people who are not really min-maxers, but they know how to play well.
Yes.
And they know the good abilities, they know how to deal some damage, and they know how they're good at playing D&D.
Right.
So, almost always I will just max a creature's hit points to the max that they can roll.
Yeah.
Almost always when I play D&D. And it's literally just because of that. It's just because if I play a scenario, an encounter where the little encounter builder tells me that this is going to be a hard fight, I know to treat that actually as probably an easy fight for my players, technically. Almost every fight that I want to feel difficult has to be deadly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I'm with you. And I mean, there are times where it's like, this was meant to be an easy fight. This was meant to be a medium fight. But yeah, and then I'm also with you. I haven't fudged dice rolls. I have done that for like first time players, because if we're all starting at level 1, I can probably think like off the top of my head, there's been, I think, 2 times of the many games that I've run for new players where I rolled a natural 20 and I know, that's probably going to kill them, like, and it's like, well, that's not going to be fun for them. They're trying to learn the game.
That's
right?
not a good first experience.
There are times where, like, after a few times of playing, they start to understand the game. Hey, I'm not really going to be probably be holding back a little bit, because they started learning, especially I do like to show them that they can drop to 0 hit points. That's, I think, an interesting mechanics to like to dawn on a new player. You're like, okay, like, you know,
Yeah.
the okay, you know,
Okay.
moments.
Okay. Yeah.
But for regular play as a dungeon master, no, I don't fudge dice rolls. But you know, on the whim, yeah,
As someone who almost exclusively runs pre-written stuff,
Hmm.
where the encounters are pre-generated for you,
Mm-hmm.
um, and as someone who, as I said, our group tends to play very well, be good at what they do, and do well. Like, there's nobody in the group who's like not doing any damage and just dying constantly. You know, it's like, um, as someone who runs pre-written stuff, a lot of those fights are almost trivial
Yeah,
compared to our group, you know. And some of them are meant to be, sure, but like if you're in a like when you guys fought the abbot in Curse of Strahd,
yes.
I beefed him way up. And not like way up, but just like gave him as much hit points as he possibly could have.
Mm-hmm.
I brought his minion in as well as the flesh golem,
Yes.
because just him and the flesh golem, that'd have been done lickety split. But the minion comes in and they're kind of like bardish and they can help out and stuff. So that gives a lot more resilience to the fight. Yeah, if I had done nothing to that fight and played it just as written, that wouldn't have felt difficult or scary or hard.
Right.
You guys would have mopped the floor with him.
Mm-hmm.
Because fighting one guy by himself, doesn't matter how strong he is. If there's 5 of you and you're doing, 8 to 12 attacks per round, like total, right?
Yeah,
That's
with
like,
everyone.
because you guys have a barbarian that does 4 attacks every round.
Yep.
Like, so that kind of stuff. It's like, yeah, you just can't beat the action economy. So you got to give them a little more hit points, make sure that they can stand their own. And like most of the time in Strahd, I feel accomplished if I get one of you, even just one of you, down to like 0 hit points.
Oh, yeah.
Once.
Well, there is an element of like, as I think this is kind of when it comes down to, for me, when I was thinking about this, the Dungeon Master is not supposed to be a player character. The Dungeon Master is a completely different role, right? He's not over here, confined by the rules of the game. He's trying his best to make it fair and fun and tell a good story for the rest of the players.
Yes.
So like in that sense, he's can't really quote unquote cheat because he's setting things up. If he wanted to, he could start raining down werewolves from the sky and come up with a reason for it and and just run with it. So
and also like you said, his job is to make things feel fair and like you worked for it, right? Like,
right.
If you go mop the floor with a guy that you've been building up to for 3 sessions, that doesn't feel fair or worked for. It just feels kind of
okay.
meh.
This was the other thing I thought of as well. Particularly with, and I don't know if this has anything to do with anything, but a lot of the monsters that we use, unless you're using things from like new books, and even then you only get a handful of new monsters. Mm-hmm. Whereas the player characters are getting like new spells, new subclasses, that are kind of ramping up the damage that you can do and the support that you can do. Like back when fifth edition first came out, the wizards had no support like healing stuff. Now the wizards do kind of have access to like Wither and Bloom, and like subclasses that potentially could do that. Like now the sorcerers have the divine, I think it's just called, they have like where they get imbued with angel-like powers.
Divine Bloodline.
Yeah, that's it. Divine Bloodline. And that has some healing abilities. Same with the warlock that can make a pact with an angel and get some healing abilities. Like those weren't really in the games
Celestial Warlock,
when a lot of the monsters were kind of, introduced to the game. So that was another thing I'm kind of realizing that like you kind of need to adapt to what your players are also bringing in to the game.
Also, with Tasha's, it's like it's much easier to make your character more defined and direct in their path to power and their abilities. It's much easier to have a well-defined character rather than a character that's very rounded out and kind of has things that they don't need. Like, it's very unusual to find a character that has abilities or ability scores or skills that are not like working towards their defined goal as a character. Like that, I feel like that used to be pretty common before. It's like, yeah, I've got this feature over here. I never use it because it doesn't really actually work with what I'm trying to do here.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh, you don't need that anymore. You can just get rid of it and replace it with something you actually want or like. And because of that, yeah, the power creep of, I haven't even thought about that. Like, to be fair, the power creep of new subclasses to old subclasses is very real. But then how much more is the power creep of new players to original monsters from the DM's guide that haven't been updated in 6 years?
It was just a thought I was kind of thinking of. And sometimes as a dungeon master, it doesn't really dawn on you until you're at the table and you're just like, oh, snap. No, the Twilight Cleric for like the past 3 rounds has just been negating all the damage I've been doing. Okay, well, maybe I'm going to add some extra, and another D6 damage to this type of thing,
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Thanks.
We're not throwing anyone under the bus.
No, throwing no one out.
No, I mean, because I do know that there are dungeon masters out there that do like prevent certain subclasses from being in the game for that reason, just because the power creep.
A lot of dungeon masters tell people that they can't play Twilight Clerics
because they're strong. They're powerful.
They're very strong.
So I think that's kind of the bottom line of what I think. He's like a dungeon master. If you were to think in the way of like, do they play like a PC? They don't, so they can't really cheat. However, I do think a dungeon master can cheat in like if they are, and I just wanted to point this out for reasons like, do I think a good dungeon master can't cheat? I just think they can't. But can a DM cheat? Yes, because like if they're doing the thing of like specifically targeting one person. A natural, they roll a 2 and they say it's a natural 20 just to target that one person. Or I don't know. I was kind of thinking like, I even don't really like the thing of like where you really want your NPC to come off as suave and cool and they're really deceptive and you roll a deception check and they roll poorly on it and the PC rolls pretty good on an insight check. Well, okay, they do see around that lie. But as a dungeon master, you're like, oh, but I want them to come off as that. It's like, well, the dice kind of have told a story, and it's kind of like maybe
there's other ways to do that.
Yeah. So, I don't know. It's an interesting topic.
That moment should be a moment of this guy's so hard to read, but you catch something that maybe nobody else ever has. He has a tell, and you find it. Like, that should be a cool moment as a player, Like, this guy is suave and is hard to read, but you did it anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. And so it comes down to, like, being a good DM. Being a good game master means, being fair and telling the story that sometimes the dice dictate or just cinematic-wise you want to narrate. I think it's just important to you're not targeting anyone. Your focus is on the game, referee, storytelling, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. If your goal is to push the story forward in a healthy way and to provide more intrigue and tension and drama and fun for your players, almost nothing you can do towards that goal should be considered cheating. Anywhere from fudging rolls to saying, you guys have done 400 damage and I think I'm going to let him die now. you know, like just because it makes sense and it's cinematic and this has been a good fight now and the right person is killing him because he's from their backstory and like all this stuff. And you know, sometimes that's a little too much and it can feel like you're manufacturing things that shouldn't be, because I can say that in the games we play, our dungeon master is very he's very tied to the rules.
Yeah.
He likes to play things as they play out. He doesn't like to mess with anything. He goes by the rules and he does it, and he lets things play out how they play out with the dice. Like we had a fight with one of your, this was back in a game that we were in together. One of your characters, we were having a fight directly from their backstory, and your character went down in the first round.
Yeah.
And we killed that guy, and you weren't necessarily the one who killed him or were super involved in killing him. And it was like, oh, but it ended up adding things to your character, you know? It ended up changing your character and their outlook on life, and it did things to adjust and make the story feel different. And that's great too, you know, like, because if you're actually good players, you'll roll with those punches.
Right. I think that's huge.
And you'll make them be character choices.
I think that's huge. Because, I would say I'm very much with you there. Because I would say probably majority of the time I'm running the rules as written, right? Because I think, like you said, it can be manufactured. And I think you don't want to necessarily, quote unquote, use the hand of God that you have as the dungeon master, because you don't necessarily want to force certain moments. Because I know for me, sometimes the best moments at the table are those moments that the dice have kind of dictated the story. Like you said, the moment that you talked about was someone from my backstory first attack had a magical weapon, and I failed my con save, and I straight up was killed. And I was brought back because of the druid and our level at that point. But still, it added something really cool to the story. It's like, would it have been cool to have that fight go on for round after round, and it would be a slog? Maybe. But I don't know. Yeah. Sometimes, like we probably will get to a fight today that, and when I get to talking about a certain battle, the fight lasted really fast, and it was a pretty dramatic moment, but it was really cool and thematic, like, because we were just hell bent on revenge type of thing. So there's moments that, like, I usually like to just lean into the rules a little bit, but those occasional moments where you're just like, oh God, and usually it's probably this. When I realized I have kind of messed up or didn't plan something correctly, or I didn't balance something. Yeah. Or I'm like, oh God, they're new. I don't want to just outright kill them in this moment. That's when the moments that I'll kind of step in and maybe guide a little bit.
When a fight starts and you're 2 rounds in and they're already almost dead, you have to kind of be like, wait, this was supposed to be hard. Okay, now minions running from the side. Goblins, great, fine, throw them in. And also, they take a healing potion. They have 4 of them. Right. Okay, all right, everything's fine now. We're okay. We're
good. You know, those moments, it makes sense, and you kind of want to guide a little bit. I don't know, you can, but I don't know. Sometimes for sure you need to realize, like, no, I planned wrong, and I was like, okay, this fight they destroyed. I'll plan better next time, type of thing. I don't know. I think it's one of those things you learn as you play, and as a dungeon master, you can, you know, improv's a thing.
You're telling a story, and you're working together with your players to tell that story. You have a little more power than they do. I think definitely where it goes into, like, absolutely you should not do that is when you're taking a lot of agency away from the players. Yeah. You know, if it's like a choice that they've continually made to try and do this thing, and you keep throwing walls in their way that shouldn't necessarily be there. You're just doing it to make the story do what you want it to do, not what they want it to do. That's a problem. But in general, if you're trying to work together with them and make it fun for them and make a cool experience that they're enjoying, and you have to fudge a couple things to get there, that's totally fine, in my opinion.
I don't know. It's interesting. And I honestly, I love how different DMs answer this question, because I'm pretty sure if you were to ask our dungeon master Dip, he would be. I'm pretty sure he's going to go. I would love to hear your thoughts down in the comments. I'm pretty sure he sticks to the rules as best as he possibly can. He is the dungeon master that to this day I have never seen anyone else do, and that's calculate angle, geometry, to see if they're actually within range of a spell when they're elevated. You know what I'm saying? And that's not a bad thing.
If they're 30 feet up and you're 20 feet away, they're not 20 feet away. They're 22.8 feet away or whatever, you know?
Like, whatever it is. He pulls out his calculator and he does that. And I think that's fun. That's fun and totally like, because he likes to keep it as real as possible, as thematic and immersed as possible. And I think that's totally good. Would I do that? No, I don't really necessarily.
I feel like a major difference with that is Dip's DMing style and play style, like you said, is immersion, and he wants it to feel real, and he wants it to feel like a real world. A story is being told, but it's one that could happen given the circumstances. You know what I mean? Whereas I feel like you and I both tend to DM more along the lines of this is a fantasy novel. Like this is a book. You're living out a story that's being told, and it's a fantastical story. And so every once in a while, it's okay for things to be a little wibbly wobbly in order to get that cinematic and wonderful storytelling feeling.
Right, exactly. Or I know for me, like, especially in combat, and this may be kind of related to the fact that I've mostly DM'd for a lot of players, is that when I start taking a moment to like do some side calculations in order to see if that works, it just takes even longer to get to that seventh person in line. You know what I'm saying? In the combat. So for me, I think I've just gotten to the point of like, I want to keep the flow, kind of the beat going, you know, and the epic and explaining things, you know, and I'm sure if it was for a smaller group, that might change, you know, because dungeon masters kind of, you know, can change as well. So I don't know. That's a great way to put it.
That's something else I was going to say is it also varies wildly depending on the table you're playing for. Like you've already mentioned, there are things that you fudge at the table that you would never fudge for, experienced players that you end up changing for new players. And that's totally fine and great because you want it to be an enjoyable experience for their first time. You don't want them to play D&D for the first time and just die my character because they accidentally made a couple mistakes, you know?
Right. Or not even necessarily mistakes of just like because I rolled a really good or
If you're in a table full of people who are like, we hate it when DMs do that. We just want to let the dice do what they do, and we're fine with the consequences, and we're okay with whatever happens. Then in that kind of a table, maybe I wouldn't do those things. You know?
Exactly. Yeah, I think it also is very much one of those things where you start to learn your players as well and what they like, right? Yeah. And in the same way where you start learning, their quirks and how they role play or build their characters, they also start learning you. And so I feel like you never want to get to that place as a dungeon master where they can start telling when you add hit points to monsters or you fudged a dice roll or something. Because I think you want to keep as much as possible authentic to what's going on around the table. But
for sure.
Great discussion, Kurtis. Thank you. Great thoughts. I hope you agreed with us. Otherwise, you can go rage in the comments below. No, in all honesty, I would love to hear your thoughts. For those watching, thank you so much for watching. Would love to hear your thoughts if you have opinions on this and let us know or points that we didn't mention that you had. But with that, Kurtis, are you ready to get back to the Witch's Omen?
Yes, Witch's Omen.
I said it right this time. Omen.
Is that
not omens? Called? The Witch's Omen. That's our group name.
Oh,
right? Because remember how I always say the witch's
Right.
almond, but it's actually the witch's
Yes.
almond.
I remember. Yeah, let's get back to them. Let's see how they are faring in this weird market full of thorns.
Weird market full of thorns indeed. So last time we talked about, we got to the marketplace because we are after the dancing hut, Baba Yaga's dancing hut in the Reign of Winter Pathfinder adventure. We are not sponsored by them. If they want to sponsor us, they're welcome to, though.
Paizo,
do it. You won't do it. So when we got here, there was a lot of craziness going on. Do you remember the Dawn Pipers and the crazy reality shifting portal?
I remember the Dawn Pipers. The Dawn Pipers. Yes, I remember them, and I remember the weird little black hole thing that was like sucking in reality around it.
Yes, it was a reality siphon. So when we got here, we have ran into, there were a few encounters, and just to explain it real quick, it's basically, we have a map that's essentially the market square, and we treat it like a dungeon. And essentially, we just go through the map on the market square, and encounters happen. Instead of opening up, a room and something happens, we turn a corner and something happens in this case. So it's very interesting. But we have ran into a Dawn Piper that was on the water with swirling swirling water, essentially. And then we went that was a funny face, Curtis. That made me laugh.
Swirling water, I'm listening.
Swirling water. And then we ran into some other things. Nixia ran and tested the wall of thorns that Dara was very scared about. But we continued. Nixia. We continued on. And
hold on. What is up with that? Why does Sarah always make characters that are so ready and willing to just be like, yeah, I'll walk into that wall of fire. Great, sounds good. I'll jump down that hole. I'll be the first one.
I feel like she just loves, she loves pushing the button, and she loves seeing, like, she doesn't mind to just kind of do things, I think. To push things forward,
She also loves the self-sacrificial trope.
She very much does. She very much does. In fact, this is a complete side note.
In fact, hold on. Let me say that. In fact, the one shot that she made us play ended in one of the characters having to sacrifice themselves.
Oh, wow. That's so true. Oh, my gosh. This is also a complete side note, but the other day I asked her, because I love asking, like, just hypothetical questions. I asked her, like, if you could make if you were to write a story or a world, what would be like your magic system? And we were just talking back and forth, and her thing was like, I love the cost of magic, right? Like, that's like doing something, and then what do you get out of it, type of thing, and like, what's the sacrifice you have to give? And it was like, she loved, yeah, it's a theme. Mm-hmm. We might have to have some guest stars on here. Maybe we'll have Sarah on. She can talk about her one shot or something like that, and then we'll have to have Joelle on at some point.
That would be awesome.
Talk about some stuff. Awesome. That'd be great. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. That was a great, interesting moment, because for Dara, I think it also made him realize, like, oh gosh, how persuasive am I? How much is the magic like taking me over and like making me so, like, did I somehow charm Nixia into doing this? Like, I don't know, like, what's going on? Because he is a glamour bard, and they have that like enthrall performance. Pretty crazy. Glamour bard, which is a very fun class. So when we found that Dawn Piper, we had a couple of encounters. There was like the tree house with the family, or the family that was in the in like this tree house like place. But we found the reality siphon portal. And it was it was interesting, because we did a couple of checks in order to figure this out, but it's like pulling things in toward it, right? they're like the trees and the snow and things are like kind of almost bent to where like it's actually siphoning the reality here. Slowly, in our checks, we learned that it like could potentially take, a few days, but like at most like a week. It was like 5 days or a week or something like that, that this could just take away all the reality in this area. And it's very strong. It's a very strong portal, and it's several sources of like a ritual magics are going on here. And that made us kind of all go, there might be something going on here with that Don Piper that we completely left over there in the water area. But we take a right and we continue on. Like right there next to it was another Don Piper, this is where we left off last time. This one had a bunch of rocks that were floating around it mid-air. And again, we were trying to talk to it, but it seemed to not really care. Dara started playing a song and started singing in Sylvan, and it seemed to recognize that. And this was where it had that classic quote that was just the absolute greatest quote ever.
Yes.
I'm gonna see if I can find it in my notes because it was pretty great.
Something about your
yes. Turn away and live your lives in peace and safety, unburdened by the heavy weight of relevance.
Heavy weight of relevance. Oh my god.
Is what he told us in Sylvan. So with that, he attacked us and we fought it, which was kind of a fun moment because we like our barbarian and fighter were trying to like climb up these rocks in order to get up there and things like that. It took some athletics check, but we wound up destroying it and realizing, okay, stuff might be going down here, and these creatures may be trying to pull the hut, because we did see on the other side of the portal was the dancing hut of Baba Yaga. We kind of saw through the reality shiftingness just on the other side, the hut. So we continued on, and this is where we had our first, or not really first, we had another encounter with these rather vicious creatures called a Preyton.
Preytons.
Preyton. Preyton, which are like creepy deer-like creatures, and they were after our hearts.
Okay, after your hearts. Wow, they trying to romance you.
Well, it was actually a pair of them, and they were a mated pair that we learned later through the Dungeon Master. We would never have known this.
How sweet. Swingers.
Swingers. But they were specifically after to devour our hearts in a more physical sense, Kurtis.
Oh.
Yes.
Gotcha.
Preytons are very, very interesting. They are very savage, nightmarish-like creatures. They have features of stags and wolves, and great birds of prey. They are vicious beasts, and like they actually were flying, and they're pretty intelligent. They can actually talk and things like that. They loathe pretty much any other creature. They're pretty nasty sort.
They loathe any other creature. They're deer-like? Is that what
Yeah, they're stag-like.
Oh, they're peritons, not preytons.
Oh, I'm sorry.
It's P-E-R-Y. P-E-R-Y.
I may have spelled that wrong in my... But thank you.
Peritons.
Peritons. Thank you. They're very, very savage-looking creatures. But yeah, they are like
They have a stag's body, a hawk's wings and talons, and the head of a wolf with a rack of sharp antlers.
Yes. Yeah. So yeah, those were very scary creatures that we did fight. I believe our barbarian took like a big hit from these guys with a natural 20, if I remember correctly. But yeah, they were vicious creatures, just attacked us immediately, and that's the interesting thing about like Fey-like creatures that are just pretty much out to just eat you. And as a dungeon master, I know for me it's kind of like how to try and use these in like a dramatic sense, but it's like, but the lore basically is like they're just gonna attack and try and eat you. Like,
Yeah.
But I think it just added an atmosphere of like weird fae creatures are all about here. And so there's definitely this kind of the veil here is kind of shallow, if you will, maybe like things are leaking over from the first world or the Feywild. So it's kind of like, oh gosh, what's going to come around every corner? So it added, from the other encounters we noticed this, but these were like, oh god, like what else could be around the corner? We went a little bit further and we wound up happening upon an abandoned house in this area as well. So there's a little encounter there where there was there was one of the wolves, the wolves that are also can kind of disguise themselves as people, that we had some interactions with.
Oh yes, the winter wolf.
The winter wolves. Yes, thank you. So we were having this interaction. It was very interesting because she was basically trying to convince us to run away with her, and we're kind of like, no, we have a mission here. Like she's trying to get out. Like I think she's stuck in here, if I remember correctly. She was stuck here. We wound up like getting ready to fight, but Dara was able to convince her to just leave. We're going to go about our business, and so she left. Potentially could come back. We'll see. But she wound up just fleeing. We went into the house, and this is where I believe Nixia found one of the coolest things that Dip, I believe, placed in here maybe specifically for Sarah. She found a quiver that is essentially a bag of holding as well. So...
Oh, no, that's a real thing, and that's a real thing.
It's a D&D magical item. It's like and I believe he I don't know if it was in the book or he put it here specifically for Sarah because she is also a pack rat when it comes to picking up weapons. She's the fighter, so she's like, I can use it. So she now has a quiver that's a bag of holding that she puts all her weapons in specifically, and it's pretty awesome.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that was kind of the thing of note there. We wound up continuing on, and we're kind of getting toward the end of the last little portion that we can discover here, because we didn't go back to fight the first guy that we met,
the water one.
But the water, yeah, we didn't go back to them. We kind of continued forward, just like we know he's there. He kind of ignored us. We'll see what happens, type of thing. This is when we came across a large campfire. There were 3 ladies here and a few other males that were all partying and kind of just laughing and drinking wine and just sitting around the campfire having a good time. And that your Kurtis's face
seems like a typical Fae trap.
All of us. The most amazing thing is basically we walk up to this and, we didn't know it at this time, but Dips did some hidden rolls for all of us on wisdom checks to be charmed by these 3 individuals. These individuals were known as Baccae, I believe. Baccae.
Okay.
I believe is how you would pronounce that.
Sure.
They are Fae-like creatures. Well, they're not Fae-like. They are Fae. They're basically Fae creatures that can charm people.
Okay.
They kind of typically will have like their emotions are kind of, from what I remember, their emotions are kind of wild. This is just kind of in the lore. They kind of embody wherever they originally came from. They kind of embody the crazy emotions. So they could be in very playful moods. They could be in kind of a more vicious like mood, in like an evil sense. Their emotions can kind of go back and forth, but they're typically kind of tricksy and they like to mess with people. They can be mostly friendly though. So this was kind of the interesting thing, was like they didn't attack us or anything. They had this, I believe it was like a gaze that was that could charm you and just kind of makes you want to just have a good time and party. And Nixia and our barbarian Zav got charmed by them. Dara and Sorian were totally fine.
Wonderful.
So this is where we have just an absolute great time of trying to convince them to move on. This was a very chaotic moment because I remember Dara was just kind of fed up with like all the crazy fae that they've kind of run across, and now our barbarian and fighter want to just chill and have a good time and take a rest with obvious creatures that have completely and utterly charmed them. And the merchants, we learned that the other ones look like merchants. So they were merchants that were here from when it was a market. And they're just having a good time drinking, and the whole time...
They've just been stuck here, charmed.
Exactly. And the whole time the three ladies are just over here like, why don't you guys just take a chill pill, Like, just relax. Come in, and they ask us a few questions.
Come on, man.
This was the
Just relax.
This was the moment where the two magic users got completely owned by the barbarian and fighter because they wound up grappling us to the ground, and Dara wound up gotten tied up by Zav, and Nixia was sitting on our wizard and that couldn't move. So. Eventually, we just kind of like Sorian is just kind of like, okay, look, they're not attacking us. He just kind of gives up, and Nixia continues to sit on him. Dara gets gagged because he's trying to break the charms. Yeah, it was. So we have a short rest, and after the short rest, they're like, okay, you guys can go now, and so we wound up moving on. Like, well, they didn't say it. It's like,
wow, that's
it. It was like we just moved on.
They didn't steal your souls or anything?
Nope. They just were having a great time. Because I think that's the thing is like
they really just wanted to have a good time.
Their emotions are kind of chaotic, right? They could be evil. They could be good. They're typically good. And like they just...
So if you tried to fight them and got them mad, it could end really bad.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. It is interesting. So we have a short rest. Dara didn't get a short rest because he was gagged up and tied down, but everyone else did. And then when we wound up moving on to the last portion, like right when we left that area is when it dawned, when it came to Zav and Nixia realizing that they were charmed. It was like once we left that area. So it was like, all right.
So I read that it's pronounced Bake, because they are the progeny or creations of the god Bacchus, who is the real life Roman god, or maybe Greek god of wine and drink and partying.
Because that was the whole thing. I think they make their own wine or something like that.
The wine is known to like make people complacent and more susceptible to their charms. Yeah.
Yes, that makes a lot of sense. So yeah, that was really, it was very chaotic. If I remember, I think Joelle or someone tuned in right at that moment, and it was absolutely hilarious. But we wound up leaving the area. It dawns on them, and they were kind of like, oh, wow, we just kind of owned you guys, didn't we? It's like,
well, you guys.
Well, we didn't want to hurt you.
Yeah, didn't really feel like throwing a fireball right there.
Yep.
Maybe I should have. Now that I think about it.
It was truly one of the things. Like looking back on it, it's like we made probably all the wrong choices because we were trying. From what I remember, we were trying to damage Nixia and Zav in order to try and snap them out of it, but their damage wasn't breaking the spell. So it was like if we had attacked them, it probably would have broke.
But then you would have had a tough fight on your hands.
Yeah, so it was kind of like it. Regardless, it was hilarious, and that
it worked out.
It completely did. So we wound up moving on and coming across a third Dawn Piper, and this one was a female. This one I do believe was I believe this one was the Sky Tree. It was kind of the name of this area. Basically, knowing that we need to defeat these creatures, I believe it says a couple lines to us, but we were kind of like, we know we have to kill you because you guys are. Was kind of the moment where like we knew the Dawn Pipers are the ones that are kind of behind the whole portal thing.
Yeah.
So yes, so we wound up fighting this one and defeating her. This one also had a little like minion compared to the other ones, which was kind of it was called a twig jack, which is a fey creature that is kind of they're all about. Oh, Mondo just hit the door. She's like, "Hello, what's going on in there?" Yeah, Quigjacks are kind of they're mischievous creatures. They're kind of known for like going to sabotage certain things to play pranks on humans. Like when they kind of come to our world, they'll be the ones that kind of go and mess up a like wagon wheel type of thing. Okay. But we wound up defeating both of them, and then going back to the first one. Wound up defeating that one, and then we went back to the portal, which was depleted now. So having defeated the sources of the ritual magic that was going on, the portal vanished and is no longer trying to pull in this area and the dancing hut into the Feywild.
Wow.
This is when we, for the first time, get to see the dancing hut just on the other side. However, in between us and the dancing hut is none other than Nazana herself, who was the witch at the Pale Tower. This is the one we have been after basically since kind of Nadia kind of came on our team, because this is the witch, if you recall, Kurtis, who essentially cursed Nadia's daughter's soul to a doll. So essentially killed her daughter. Yep. So the revenge is very strong, and this is the fight that I was talking about earlier when we were kind of discussing climactic battles and things like that. This was a really kind of cool cinematic battle because Nazana's artwork is really cool. I'll put up some artwork, but she kind of has this kind of a mini scythe. I don't know what you would kind of call it. Kind of like what you would see. I think it's labeled as a wand, but it looks like this.
Or a sickle? Sickle? Is that what you're talking about?
A sickle. I think that's the name of it. Yes. Okay. I'm just gonna. But she looks. I mean, like she has these robes, of like blue and ice.
An owl feather collar.
Yeah,
she reminds me of like the White Witch from Narnia a little bit.
Yeah, she has that vibe definitely, which is kind of cool. A lot of the nobility here kind of do. But this is when we finally, and this is kind of like in the game. I'll definitely put that up.
Yeah,
on
screen
I'm
just
no, do it. But this is where it was a cinematic fight. We wound up rolling like really well. This was also, we had gotten to a level 5 around this area, so our wizard just got counterspelled. So he counterspelled a few of her spells that would have done a lot of damage to us. She also had this wand that has that Saurian winds up getting, but the fight lasted only a few rounds, and we kind of, I mean, in all frank terms, we kind of owned, because our barbarian, our fighter, and our wizard just kind of brought the A game. Dara does not bring the damage; he brings the support as much as he can, which kind of what kind of rounds out this group. I feel like,
yeah.
But it from what I remember, I believe the counter spells and Nixia and Zav were rolling really well, and we destroyed her pretty quickly. And it, from what I remember, I believe it was Saurian that got the final blow on her. Kurtis, do you remember when you said Vortex Warp was your favorite spell?
I do.
This is when we used that.
Oh, yes.
That's was right. It.
We were
I knew there was something.
That.
So what happened was the final blow was basically with the counter spells, our fighter and our barbarian were rolling really well. But Saurian, our wizard, used Vortex Warp. Because if you recall, we are surrounded by Wall of Thorns, which I believe is like a 7th level spell. but it's upcasted to 8th level, which off the top of my head I don't know exactly, but that's it. It's like 9d8 or something like that damage, or like 9d10 damage or something like that. If you recall, Nixia took like 73 damage when she ran into it. Our wizard basically forced a save on Nizana, which she failed, and then vortex warped her into the wall of thorns, wound up doing a crap ton of damage. And she I believe she was trying to wiggle out, and like her corpse just was a bloody mess by the time it got out. But that's how we destroyed and got our revenge for Nadia. And it was a very thematic moment. And that is where I believe I will stop the story for today, because this is when we are getting to the dancing hut. And we see quite a few things around here that I will get into next time when we get into my side of the backyard tabletop. But
yeah, baby.
We have basically finished the market square, and we are going to venture forth into the dancing hut, but also see the there's some things that we're going to be finding just outside the dancing hut now that we are able to, and it's getting crazy, and things are going to start getting wild, and
it's getting crazy in there, Jacob, and I can't wait to hear it. Wait, do you hear that? There's a transmission coming in. It's from our DM Dip, and he's got his notes on my story last time.
This is a segment we're calling Dip's Notes.
Dip's Notes. Okay, so last time
I'm gonna explain, so real quick, just what Dip's Notes is. Basically, our Dungeon Master Dip will listen to the podcast and send us fun things that we may have forgotten, or things that he likes to explain from the book a little bit more,
or corrections on things that we got slightly wrong,
or corrections, because we are also trying to remember and try and be entertaining. It's pretty great. And then Kurtis will give us a little teaser on next time, because we're going to jump into what's been going on for his side. So yes, Dip's Notes.
So if you remember last time, I talked about us, going down to the ship and getting back to the city and like finding all the crazy stuff in the sunken ship and all that kind of cool stuff. So there was a woman named Endaesin, who is the high priestess of Urgathoa.
Urgathoa, not Ugathoa.
So we got the information about Endaesin not from Irori's Faithful's library, but we actually got information on Endaesin from the Citadel Volscianic, where there were reports on like the stolen ship and things like that, because Endaesin is a well-known criminal in in Nidal, which is where she came from to get here on the ship.
Gotcha. Okay.
And we also got some more information from Cressida, but that hasn't quite come up yet. Also, the dead cultist on the ship, who was in the robes and had his face eaten off, all that stuff.
Yes.
It wasn't, this is a fun correction, it wasn't, when we use Speak with Dead on him, it wasn't that he was speaking a language we didn't understand.
Okay.
It was actually that the fish had completely eaten the tongue out of his mouth, and so we could not understand what he was saying.
Really? Oh, gosh.
Yes. He was trying to talk, and he was talking. We just couldn't understand what he was saying unless we made, like, good, like, perception checks. But we did good insight checks and things, and so we started asking him questions that were like yes or no, in which case we asked, did your goddess make you do this? And he said yes. And then he said some things, and then one word that we got out of it was Endaesin, and we were like, oh, that's a name that's in his little book. Remember I said he scratched out Urgathoa and put priestess? He didn't. He actually scratched it out and put Endaesin in place of Urgathoa's name. So he was worshiping Endaesin as if she was Urgathoa. or was higher than Urgathoa.
Oof. Oh dear.
The holy book that we found of Urgathoa is called Serving Your Hunger. It is a combination of a prayer book and a cookbook for the preparation of various humanoid creatures.
Well, I guess that makes wow.
It also serves as like an introductory primer for how to become undead when you die.
Is there it's basically like become a mini lich or something like that? Like
it's like a self-help book. Like, yeah,
it's like be ready for.
Here's how to make sure your body's as prepped as possible for the lich to bring you back to life.
Oh, that's amazing! Like, make sure you have your armor on and.
When we sent the sending spell to Cressida to invite her to dinner, that was when she actually told us to go visit the place called Lavender's Liniment, or I think it's just Lavender's Liniment, which is a place that is supposedly serving up a cure in little bottles for this sickness that's going around.
Ah, okay, okay.
Also, apparently, Erie's Yellow Eyes, who was the mouse folk or rat folk, not rat folk, but
the were-rat, yeah,
who sent us on our next job. I said she seemed young and little. She was not young. She was actually kind of an old woman. But we were calling her mousy and small and cute, and so in my mind, I got the image of a young girl.
An anime girl coming to your door. Yeah,
she's apparently like more than 50 years old.
Okay.
And she has like jaundice and stuff.
Oh dear.
Yeah, no big deal. I just ignored all of that as soon as I immediately got the mind palace that she was cute.
Oh dear.
The were-rat that was killed was actually like lynched publicly. Which is why the were-rats underneath were trying to like start a war, because it was like messed up what they did.
Okay.
Let's see. Oh, the reason that Ares Yellow Eyes knew to come to us was because she apparently had contacts in the Corvosan Guard. Not necessarily because we're like famous or anything, but we are pretty well known in the Guard specifically because we've done work.
That makes sense. That's been all the jobs you've been doing, yeah.
And the person that she described as her contact was Captain Roland, who was a man we've dealt with before, who was the guy who Cressida would like send to us to give us word about things.
Gotcha. Oh, that's fun. Okay.
Do you remember I talked about my dream that Cal had about lifting the ship out of the water?
It was a Star Wars moment.
Yeah, I was going to say, did you catch that was like a Star Wars reference?
Yeah.
Except Dip described it less like Yoda picking it up all calm and serene, and more like Starkiller pulling a Star Destroyer out of atmosphere, like much more like just like aggressive and powerful,
Yeah, which seems very wizard-like, wanting more power and more power.
That will conclude Dip's notes. That's it. And then, so all that to say, next time we go to my game, which we'll see when that happens. Next time we'll have to talk about how our encounter in the sewers goes with everything that goes on in there, and going and fighting the were-rats, as well as some more interesting things, including Cal trying and failing to hit on Cressida Croft, the guard captain woman, or not captain, but
you mean flirtation?
Field marshal.
You mean flirtation?
Yes.
Okay.
Trying to hit on.
I was like, hit like you guys fought her? What?
No.
Trying and failing.
It's much worse than that.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Well,
he was being a little too subtle, and so instead he left her a note that was much less subtle, and we'll see what happens with that.
Okay. Okay, I'm here
Cal,
for it.
I actually don't know what's happened with that yet, so maybe I'll know about the time we
Oh, that's super fun. Okay, well, I am looking forward to that. Specifically. Thank you all so much for watching our little podcast here, listening and watching our little podcast here. This has been the Backyard Tabletop. I have been Jake.
I've been Kurtis.
Thank you again.
And our
no,
hey,
yeah, no.
I
one of these days I'm gonna get you. One of these days I'm gonna get you.
We need a segment. Okay. We're building segments. It's what every podcast does, Jake. You got to get segments.
Okay, you're right.
The secret word for commenting this podcast is I should be thinking of these the whole time we're talking. The secret word this time is fudge.
That's a good one. Oh, that's a good one. That's a little bit of a callback to the beginning of the episode. Wow.
Yeah.
That's a great one. Oh man. Well, let us know that fudge down in the comments, and we'll see you next time.
Tell me all about your fudge. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.